Welcome back to the KTLW Quaestor Officer Training. In this module, we will be discussing monies owed to the chapter by our members and other entities. We will talk about invoicing, tracking open receivable balances, and member accountability and collections. So let's get started with the module on accounts receivable. The basic definition of accounts receivable is that they are monies invoiced by the chapter that are not yet paid. Perhaps the hardest task you will be charged with as Quaestor will be collecting monies owed to the chapter by your brothers. Here we have the meshing of friendships and finances, which is a somewhat unnatural pairing. After invoicing brothers for dues, rent, and any other fees owed to the chapter, you, along with your financial committee, will be tasked in collecting those monies on time. The most difficult challenge is holding your brothers accountable to a financial obligation which they have taken upon themselves. It is advised that you bring all resources to bear in your efforts. Utilizing financial contracts, regular statements, 30, 60, and 90-day letters, payment plans, support of your financial committee, and collection services if necessary will help ensure you perform your duties pertaining to collections. These same resources pertain to the monies owed to the chapter by persons or entities outside of Sigma Chi. Adhering to proper collection procedures and collecting monies on time provides the necessary assets your chapter will need to operate effectively. Quaestors who fall behind on collections tend to appropriate funds improperly, such as using chapter dues to pay rent if rent is not collected on time. This eventually leads to poor financial practices and undue stress on you as the Quaestor. You should not feel alone in this effort. Utilize your financial committee, chapter advisor, housing corporation, and officers of your executive committee to help enforce your chapter's financial plan. Remember that courtesy goes a long way in developing positive interactions with brothers, as well as others who owe money to the chapter. It is imperative to apply both courtesy and accountability in regard to collections. As you progress through the collection process, you should analyze and compare the income you plan to collect in your budget versus the actual income you have collected at any given point in time. This will give you the ability to adjust your collection efforts as necessary to meet your financial goals. We'll discuss that a little bit more when we talk about cash flow in a future module. Now let's take a look at our collections resources a little bit closer. The first of those resources is the use of a financial contract. We won't be reading through the whole financial contract in this module, but let's take a look at a couple of key details. At the top of the financial contract, you'll notice it says confidential. Our members are entering into a financial contract with the chapter, and the details of that contract should be kept confidential. This contract should only be viewed by the member, the Quaestor, the financial committee, and a collection service if that becomes necessary. You can see there's a section for the member to enter their personal information. There's also a section for the member to enter their parents' information should the chapter share financial contracts with the member's parents or it is requested by the member. The first section of the contract outlines the financial terms. Let's go over a couple of those terms. The first item outlines the start of the term and that it will continue while the member attends the university or college. This identifies the duration of the contract. The second item outlines that the chapter has a responsibility to pay the pledge, initiation, and member fees on behalf of the member. This helps to identify to the member that the chapter is taking on a financial responsibility as well as part of their membership in Sigma Chi. We'll go over just one more item. The third item states that prior to the date of initiation, pledges will be required to pay a one-time pledge fee and an initiation fee. It further outlines that those are in addition to any other dues or programming fees that may be required of the member. As you can see by the financial terms section of the contract, the terms are specific to both the member and the chapter, and they are clear on the terms. The second section refers to delinquent accounts. Let's take a look at the first three items in this section as well. The first item states that dues will be considered delinquent 30 days after their invoice date. This item sets clear terms for when an invoice is considered delinquent. The second item identifies that if there are any unpaid balances after that 30 days, the brother will be placed on social probation. This item identifies one of the consequences of being delinquent on a payment. The third item identifies that after 90 days that the member has an unpaid balance, the member's account will be turned over to a collection agency, that it may be filed with a small claims court, and that financial expulsion proceedings will begin. I think a key thing to point out regarding collections is that by reading, signing, and understanding this financial contract, the member is aware that these are the measures the financial committee is contractually obligated to take. As mentioned before, it is certainly a difficult decision for the Quaestor and the financial committee to make in sending a brother to collections. I do believe that this item best exemplifies that the Quaestor and the financial committee, if forced to send a brother to collections, are doing nothing more than holding the member accountable to the financial obligations they have taken upon themselves. The third section on release of liability has common language regarding hold harmless terms. The fourth section outlines contract changes, which in this case must be approved by a 2/3 majority of the voting members. And the final section is the signature section, where the member agrees that they have fully read and understand the contract and that they agree to its terms. The same is true on behalf of the chapter, as this contract is supposed to be signed by the Quaestor and the consul. By using a financial contract, a member and the chapter are able to clarify their understanding of the terms of the membership, particularly as it pertains to their financial obligations. Our second resource is sending regular statements. Let's take a look at a pending charge example from our practice account in Greekbill. Here you can see at the top it says pending charge details for Brother Thomas Cohen Bell. If this were a real charge at the beginning of the semester, this would convert to an invoice, at which time I would be able to print a statement which would have similar information. So let's take a look at some of the information that's part of this charge that would be part of the invoice and in turn be part of the statement that I would send to Brother Bell. The statement should include the brother's name, as well as their member number, and they may also have an account number within the software. Statements should list the charges. Here in this case you can see that there will be a charge for social dues and a charge for a parlor fee. The statement should also include the amount for each charge, which here you can see the social dues charge was $60 and the parlor fee charge was $50, and the statement should always have a total that the member currently owes. At the bottom of the statement, here you can see $110. Once we have invoiced our brothers, it is imperative that we send regular statements to continually update them on the status of their account and how much money they owe to the chapter. Our third resource is the use of 30, 60, and 90-day letters. As its name suggests, the 30-day past due letter is to be sent when a brother's account has become 30 days past due. You can see on the template we have a place to put the date, the person's name and their address, and you can see by the language that this is a courteous reminder that their account is past due. We're letting them know they've received the statement because they have a past due balance. We're also stating that it appears they've just overlooked that their payment was due. Here you have the opportunity to put in a day of the month in which the bill is to be due, and that you greatly appreciate the payment in full. You also have a place to put your email so they can contact you if they have any questions. And you're thanking them in advance for their prompt attention to this matter. A brother would receive a 60-day past due letter if they had not responded to the Quaestor with either a payment or setting up a payment plan since receiving a 30-day letter. You can see it has many of the same components as the 30-day letter, with a few exceptions. One, we're letting them know that they have not made a payment or set a payment plan since receiving their 30-day letter. You also have the opportunity to put in the number of days they have to make a payment or to set up the payment plan before you seek further collection efforts. A member would receive a 90-day suspension letter if they had not responded to the 30 or 60-day letters they received previously. The 90-day letter outlines how much they owe, as well as what date it was due on. It further outlines the terms of the financial suspension. Here you can see they must appear in front of the executive committee at the next executive committee meeting, that they've lost their right to vote, they've lost their right to hold office, they've lost their right to represent the chapter, and they've lost the right to attend chapter functions. We're letting them know compliance to these terms is their responsibility. We're also stating that once they've fulfilled the financial obligation, they can return to good standing. Another important note on the 90-day suspension letter is that if you have to issue one, it should also be copied to the executive committee for their records. Our fourth resource is setting up payment plans with our members. A member payment plan is a promissory note between an individual and the chapter that typically allows them to pay off a debt in multiple payments. You can see they're making a promise to pay a certain amount of money by the stated payment dates. There's an area to enter a fine amount should any of the payments go past 30 days. You begin by entering a starting balance. Then you enter the payment dates in which the payments will be due, the payment amount that will be due on each date, and the remaining balance would show updates on how much is owed after each payment. This form would then be signed by the member as well as the Quaestor. We should also be able to turn to our financial committee for support in our collection efforts. If you recall from a previous module, the financial committee should be helping us review member payment plans. They should also be helping in collections related to our financial contracts and those payment plans. And finally, as a last resort, you can turn to a collection service to aid in collecting monies due to the chapter. Some financial softwares, such as GreekBill, have collection services built into their program. For many Quaestors and financial committees, the decision to send a brother to collections is not an easy one. But if there is one thing above all to remember about this discussion regarding collections, it's that you are simply holding your brothers accountable for the financial obligation which they have taken upon themselves. Now that we've talked a little bit about what accounts receivable is and the resources available to us regarding AR, let's talk briefly about managing accounts receivable. To do so, I'm going to log back into GreekBill. Some softwares, such as GreekBill, have set invoice dates. This means that any pending charges you have created will automatically turn into invoices and be sent to members or other persons or entities on the next invoice date. As an example, if you have an invoice date that is the 15th of the month and you create a pending charge for all members for dues on the 10th of the month, those pending charges will not turn into an invoice until the 15th of the month. At that point, the software will automatically send the invoices to the members. It is important to understand that regardless of the invoice dates that you have preset in your software, you should create the charges at the time the amount owed is incurred. If your accounting software or financial system does not have preset invoice dates, ensure that you are sending invoices on the date the amount is incurred. You will want to also ensure that you follow up by sending statements every 30 days from the date of the invoice until the amount owed is paid in full. Now let's take a look in an accounts receivable report. You should get into the habit of reviewing your AR reports on a weekly basis. In most financial softwares, you'll be able to access your accounts receivable report from the reporting module. If we look to the top right of the reports in GreekBill, you'll see accounts receivable, and it gives me the option to run the report. For the purposes of our example, I'm going to select September 1st of 2020 as our report date. I'm selecting that because those are the pending charges I've put in for the members with relationship to their dues, assuming that these will be invoiced at the beginning of the following semester. When I click Run Report, it's going to populate our member list and the amounts that they owe. Since these invoices haven't already posted, they are currently sitting in pending charges. Once these invoices post, this amount will move over to the current balance. The current balance represents the current amount owed for each member. Now I want to point something out because I think this is important to understand in GreekBill as well as other financial management softwares. When you see this past due amount, that means that the invoice or set of invoices that represent the amount owed have gone past whatever their term date is. For most examples, it has a net 30 term, which means the invoice is due within 30 days. From the time of the invoice to the time of whatever term is set, in our case 30 days, that amount will be the current balance. So when you see 1 to 30 days in the past due column, this 1 to 30 days does not represent the day of the invoice till the 30th day when it would become past due. This means that it is truly 1 to 30 days past due. At 30 days past due, that means that it's 60 days from its original invoice date. That's important to understand when you're looking at this report. If you see amounts in 1 to 30 days, this 1 to 30 days past due represents 31 days to 60 days. The same is true as we move across the column to 30 to 60 days past due and 60 to 90 days past due. So for the purposes of our resources that we've already been over, such as our 30, 60, and 90-day letters, you wouldn't send a 30-day letter when the amount is in this column here, because in this column it has not yet become 30 days past due. When the amount moves over to 30 to 60 days past due, that very first day is when you would send your 30-day letter. If the amount crossed over to 60 days past due, it would move to this column here. That's when you would send a 60-day letter. And the 90-day letter, or the notice of financial suspension, that would come when they are over 90 days due. So as you can see from the accounts receivable report, we can see every member of the chapter, we can see their member ID, what their status is, their current balance, if they have one, and any past due amounts and how past due they are in this section here. As mentioned as we were getting into the report, you want to make sure that you want to get into this report at least once a week to see what the current status of your members are and what the current status of the balances they owe are, so that you can react appropriately and utilize your collection resources to make sure you're working to collect all of the amounts owed to the chapter on time. And before we go, let's take a quick look at how we can use a couple of our collection resources in conjunction with our software. In GreekBill, If we go back to our dashboard and click on Agreements, we have the ability to set up and manage contracts within the software. If we click on this financial contract that I created, you can see down here that I was able to add our financial contract that we already went over in this module into GreekBill. If we go all the way to the bottom, you can see that it's been assigned to Brother Bell. If Brother Bell were to receive this in an email form and sign it electronically, he would then move over to the signed members. Now if we go back to our dashboard, back to Agreements, let's take a look at Managing Payment Plans. We also have the option to create payment plans and upload our payment plan information into the software so that when we assign it, as we did with Brother Bell, it can send it electronically so that the member can sign it, at which point they will become a signed member to an official payment plan through the software. So these are just a couple examples of how we can use our collection resources in conjunction with some of our financial softwares, in this case GreekBill, to incorporate our collection procedures into our software. This concludes our module on accounts receivable. If your chapter uses financial software, please contact your representative for more information on using accounts receivable functions and collection functions if they are available. Some softwares, such as GreekBill, have collection functions built in. If you wish to access the collection resource templates you saw in this video, you can download them from your Quaestor SharePoint files or from this Canvas vKTLW learning management system. Some of these resources are also available on sigmachi.org. Use these resources along with your financial committee support to hold your members and others accountable to their financial obligations that they have to your chapter. Remember to take part in the online discussion related to this officer training module with your facilitator and the members of your Quaestor group.